Welcome to Small Town Dark Truths. I'm your host, Alexis, and this is a very, very special episode because we are going to be talking about the folklore of Winder, Georgia. So in the middle of every single season, that's when we're going to be talking about the cryptids or folklore or whatever there is that is, fantasy or creepy or anything like that within these small towns that we visit. This season we are going to Winder, Georgia. And so we're going to be talking about this crazy, super interesting, awesome folklore. I think it's awesome because I like reading about it, but in a way it's not very awesome because bad things happen. Bad things definitely happen. But anyway, I'm super duper excited. I've been obsessed with this folklore ever since I first heard it, which was in 8th grade, and we will be talking about my obsession with it in the debrief, because a girl's obsessed. A girl is definitely obsessed. I tried to make my background more spooky. I think I massively failed, but ignore that for now. I have spiders. Ignore it. Okay, I tried. My next folklore episode will definitely look a little bit better, but yeah, anyway, let's get on with the spooky story for today. Just outside of Winder once laid a place that natives called Nodoroc. That word had been whispered to mean gateway to hell. And according to local legend, Nodoroc wasn't just a bubbling swamp or a mud volcano. It was home to something else, something alive. A beast with burning red eyes, a head like a bear, and a wolf body. And also a forked tongue that would lash out at the damned. And they called it the Wog. Now, I will be saying Wog and Bog because technically the Nodoroc is a bog, but the Wog is the beast, okay? So just remember that because I will be saying Bog, Wog, Bog, whatever. Anyway, was it a monster guarding the entrance to hell, a spirit born by ritual and execution, or just a nightmare passed down by generation? Tonight we will be uncovering the truth behind one of Georgia's strangest tales, the dark folklore of the Wog. Let's set the stage. Picture North Georgia in the 1700s, long before highways or before little towns like Winder existed. Before a monster, before there were settlers and cabins and ghost stories around firelight, there was land. Just outside of what is now Winder, Georgia, there was a place that the natives called Nodoroc, and that word didn't mean forest or marsh or hill. It meant something closer to place of fire or boiling earth, or what most people remember, the gateway to hell. Because Nodoroc wasn't like any other land around, it was a mud volcano, not the lava spewing kind that you'll read in a textbook, but a heaving, bubbling pit of Georgia red clay, boiling gases, and a deep, shifting mud that never cooled, never sat still, and never fully stopped moving. Witnesses said that the ground trembled there, that the surface burped up pockets of gas that would ignite into blue-white flames at night. Some said that the air smelled like sulfur or ash, but others said that it smelled like death. In 1914, historian G.J.N. Wilson described Nodoroc this way in his book, The Early History of Jackson County, Georgia. He said, quote, "Imagine that, a pit of earth that looked alive, always shifting, always breathing. The natives didn't hunt there, they didn't build there, they feared it. Because they feared it, they gave it purpose." Now, natives didn't see Nodoroc as unusual land. They treated it as it was sacred, dangerous, a place set apart. And according to local lore, it became a place of justice. Some stories say that they were executed and thrown into the mud, but others say that they were given to the bog as a sacrifice, as an offering. But the natives believed that once a body sank down into Nodoroc, it was claimed, not just by the earth, but something beneath it. Criminals, prisoners of war, those who broke the laws of the tribe were brought and sacrificed or executed in Nodoroc. By the time that settlers began writing stories down, Nodoroc already had a reputation as a place of death, and hovering around those tellings is the Wog. These settlers who arrived later did not understand the language or the rituals or the meaning behind the execution, but they did understand the fear. They saw the bubbling earth, and they knew that animals avoided the place, and they claimed to have heard screams at night coming from inside of the pit long after natives were gone. And suddenly, that legend did not belong to the natives anymore, much like everything else. It belonged to Winder, to the south, and to anyone that believed that some places aren't just haunted, but alive. By early 1800s, the land around Nodoroc had changed, but the bog didn't fully dry up. It sank deeper and still bubbled, it still smoked in the winter, and every so often something strange would happen. A sudden burst of hot mud shook the ground, or sounded like something was struggling beneath the surface. People called it gas, people called it science, others called it a warning. Because the belief never fully died, if Nodoroc was a gateway, then something must have been guarding that gate. If you lived nearby in the 18th century, what would you think? If the story ended with a bog, this would just be some odd geological mystery, a weird patch of earth with some folklore attached. But somewhere along the way, people stopped thinking about the land being dangerous and started talking about something coming out of it. This wasn't just mud, this was a cursed place, and in time, a cursed place got a cursed guardian, and well, as we know now, it's called the Wog. Was it a spirit that rose from the swamp to collect the condemned, or was it a monster waiting at the edge to drag bodies under? Or was it, as some believed, the very embodiment of hell itself? The Barrow County Journal described it this way, quote, "The Wog, a hideous beast with glowing eyes, haunted the swamp, feeding on the flesh of the condemned. Its presence made certain that no one escaped their fate at Nodoroc." Now, descriptions do vary. They all paint the same chilling picture, though. The Wog was said to be about the same size as a small horse, covered with jet black fur with a sloping body of like a wolf or a bear. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, and it had a forked tongue that would dart out like a snake. Its tail was long and wiry with a white tuft at the end that twitched constantly. Its front legs were longer and more powerful than the hind, giving it a hunched, unnatural posture. And the sound it made, witnesses said it was a scream, but not like a wolf, not like a man, but somewhere in between. Locals believe that the Wog prowled Nodoroc at night, looking for carrion or the unlucky soul who wandered too close to the swamp. Imagine yourself there. Imagine walking around in the moonless light and the ground soft beneath your feet. And then you start smelling sulfur or maybe death. And then suddenly you hear it, this guttural howl, or is it a scream? It doesn't sound like a man, it doesn't sound like an animal. And then you see the glowing red eyes just staring right at you through the pine trees. Do you run, or do you pray that you're not its next victim? I don't know. The first written account of the creature linked to Nodoroc didn't actually come from the Native American legend. It came from a settler family in the early 1800s. Their description wasn't dramatic, it wasn't an exaggeration, it wasn't even meant for the public. It was a letter sent to relatives in South Carolina, and it said, quote, That part became a pattern. Animals were always the first to react. Horses refused to ride past the bog. Hunting dogs backed away with their hairs standing up. Cattle couldn't graze near the marshy edge. The land didn't just look wrong, it felt wrong, unquote. The bog was unsettling enough on its own. Bubbling mud, strange gases, and the occasional dead animal found right beside it. But when settlers heard of the natives' executions and a beast lurking the swamp, the story of the Wog only grew darker. There's an account in local history about a stone altar that once stood at the edge of Nodoroc. Some say it was built for rituals, others claim that it was nothing more than an old pile of rocks. But the story goes that Georgia Governor George Gilmer, sorry, I had to read his name real quick, George Gilmer, dismantled that altar himself, scattering the stones to make sure there was no more ceremonies that could take place there. Now, think about that for a second. A sitting governor in the 1800s felt the need to dismantle a supposed sacrificial altar because he feared what would happen there. Or was it because that the legend of the Wog was so strong that it made people uneasy even in daylight? The bog and the beast weren't just native mythology anymore. They had seeped into settler imagination. And once the Wog made a leap in local folklore, it was not leaving anytime soon. One farmer claimed that the creature attacked his livestock, but he didn't describe fang marks. He described burn marks on the skin, like the animal had been dragged across with something hot. Another claimed that he had actually shot the beast, but it didn't bleed. It only let out a sound like steam escaping and disappeared into the bush. And by the 1800s, the sightings weren't just coming from farmland. They were coming from travelers, hunters, and even children walking home from school. But the most chilling accounts weren't the ones where the Wog was seen. It's the ones where it was heard. People that lived near Nodoroc said that some nights, right before the ground shook or the pit bubbled up in gas, they would hear something pacing the edge of the bog, something heavy, stopping every few steps, like it was waiting, almost guarding, like it was making sure that nothing was going out or nothing got in. Which raises a question. Was the Wog a monster created by the bog, or was the bog a door and the Wog was just the thing that was guarding it? After the Civil War, the creature became more of a ghost story, something told to children to keep them out after dark. People stopped writing about it in journals, but they never stopped talking about it in whispers. And even today, with houses, highways, power lines, built right over the edge that used to be Nodoroc, locals will tell you the same thing. There are nights where dogs bark at nothing, when the forest goes silent all at once, and when something big moves through the trees, and the ground under your feet feels like it is breathing. As time passed, Winder grew into a quiet, small town. The forests were cut back, farms took over the land, and little by little, Nodoroc began to dry up. By the 20th century, it wasn't the bubbling hell pit that it once was, but the legend did not vanish. And like I was talking about before, in 1914, G.J.N. Wilson published the book, The Early History of Jackson County, Georgia. And in it, he preserved the story of the Wog. He wrote about the bog's constant smoke, its boiling muck, and the monster that hunts its edge. That book gave the Wog permanence, words on a page instead of just whispers at a fire. Its description never really changes. It's still the black-furred, red-eyed beast that fed on the damned. Folklore always has a way of holding on, even when the land changes, and even when science steps in. Stories like the Wog survive because it is bigger than fact. It's about fear, and it's about mystery, and it's about the dark truths that small towns never quite forget. Now, let's talk about the real horror of having a folklore in a small town. Let's try to not think about the wog being real for a second, or even that Nodoroc was necessarily an actual pit of hell. And let's think about these scary things that humans can do when they have an scapegoat like a monster in a woods. The wog was, in the early days, more than a monster. It became the enforcer, the dark figure that ensured no one would return, the creature that guards the boundary between the living and those who are condemned. As settlers arrived and natives were pushed aside, these stories changed. The bog became a deterrent, and the wog became a scapegoat. When livestock went missing, when humans disappeared in the woods, that's when the wog was blamed. It said a woman once murdered and devoured her own child, and she was thrown to Nodoroc for her crimes. Whether factual or not, the story underscores how legend tied to real fear of horror and mortality. Crime plus horror equals a cautionary tale. Unquote. The interesting part, over time, the wog role shifted from tribal judge tool to settler's nightmare to modern scapegoat for unexplained crimes. Consider this: a body found near the bog, never officially solved, a grave disturbed, bones missing, and according to multiple sources, I will quote again, the preferred meal of the wog was said to be dead things. Apparently, it was a common place to come across a dug-up grave and have a body be missing. Here, the legend offers a cover story for crime and disappearance for the things the town people might not want to say out loud. Unquote. Which I think is very true. Because when there is a monster that you can blame, when there is something uncommon, maybe when there's a missing person and you can never find them, it's always in the back of your mind when there is a strange folklore like this. Oh, it was the wog. Oh, the wog took them. When if it's not real, because again, we are talking about folklore, it gives some people a headspace to just give up on finding that person or finding out what really happened. One local history blog writes, quote, the area was said to be an eternal place of torment, that people were sentenced to be abandoned for the worst of crimes. So in effect, Nodoroc and the wog became a legal moral space and a mythic court where nature, culture, and crime converged. Now, for my listeners, imagine a late 19th century farmhouse near the bog. A father returns to find the door busted in and the cows missing and the dog, passed away. He confronts the sheriff and the sheriff shrugs. There's talk of that bog out back, he says, and what lurks there at night. The wog becomes the story told to children. The real crimes become the ones that were never solved. This intersection of myth and reality gives the wog power beyond just fright. It gives it a purpose. And maybe, just maybe, the reason the legend persists is because the crimes were never ended, because the bog is still there, and because the tale is not forgotten. So, was there really a monster in Winder, or was the wog something else entirely? Was it a thing that humans made up to cover up the horrors that they actually commit to get themselves out of the consequences or the hell that their mind has created for themselves? Let's take the skeptic's view first. Some scientists say that Nodoroc was nothing more than a peat bog. Decomposing plant matter creates gases like methane and carbon dioxide that bubbles up through the mud. And at night, these gases could ignite into a faint blue or white flame. Settlers seeing this fire dance throughout the night on the swamp might have thought that it was smoke or something supernatural. Strange animal sounds could have been mistaken for a beast, a bear perhaps, or even just amplified noises of frogs and insects that bounce off the water. Because if you ever heard one of those frogs that be screaming like that, they're just screaming like crazy. I'm telling you, I get scared of hearing those things, whatever. Or was there really something out in those woods? Something that doesn't really fit into reality or neatly fit into science or skepticism. A guardian of the gateway to hell. So tonight we've wandered into the swamp heart of Winder, Georgia. We stood at the edge of Nodoroc and we peered into the bubbling mud and stared into those glowing eyes of the wog. Maybe the monster was nothing more than a myth. Maybe it was a cautionary tale warning outsiders to respect the natives' justice. Or maybe, just maybe, something unearthly still stirs in that ground. What we do know is this: small towns remember. They pass the dark truths down generation to generation. And if you listen closely late at night, you might hear the wog howling or screaming through the pines. This has been Small Town Dark Truths. I'm your host, Alexis. Thank you for joining me as we talk about this creepy, spooky, and we explore one of Georgia's strangest legends. And don't forget to keep probing, keep questioning, because dark truths often hide where we least expect them. I will see you next week with our next episode. Bye! But wait. Don't go anywhere because I have a preview for the next episode. First, I will say I'm wearing the same outfit that I will be wearing in my next video. My next video is actually going to be a reacting to Reddit ghost stories. So that will be coming out on Thursday. But my next episode for the podcast is going to be another special episode. We are going to be going back to true crime, but we are going to be talking about 3 different crimes. These crimes I think are very important to talk about, but they don't have as much detail to make a whole entire episode. So I'm going to do a multi-crime episode in the next one. Excited for y'all to see that. But yeah, it's very interesting. We had a straight, I really can't talk. Anyway, we have a multi-state kidnapping. We have some more, unaliving and stuff like that. So it's going to be crazy. It's going to be deeply interesting. And yeah, I'll see you then. Bye.